There we go. So today we are talking about match challenges and how they can be incorporated into a fundraising plan for your co-op. So before we get started, I'd just like to go around the room virtually, so to speak, and just introduce yourself quickly, your name, your co-op, maybe where you are in terms of fundraising, if you're thinking about it, planning it, doing it, wherever you are. And Susan, there she comes back. She had to step away, I think she said, for some house maintenance. But let's start. We'll just go around the room clockwise according to my screen. So Becky, you're up first.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Hi, everybody. My name is Becky LaPlante. I'm sitting in northern Minnesota, representing the free range food co-op that is yet to be we don't even have a site yet. I'm relatively
If you need
new.
me to stop or anything so you can talk, just gotta let me know, okay?
Yeah.
Relatively new to, I've been a member of this co-op for about 7 years, but I'm relatively new to the actual volunteer piece of it. I've been asked to do the larger investor portion of the fundraising. So very interested in the topic today, Katie. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and we have a new face, Jason.
Hello.
Hi, Jason. We're just going around the room introducing ourselves, what co-op we're from and where you are
Like
in the
Linda,
fundraising.
I'm also from Grand Rapids Food Co-op.
Awesome.
We are still in the organizing stage, but we're getting ready to fund.
Awesome. Kathy is on mute. She's at work, so I won't ask her to speak up, but Kathy, you're welcome to put anything in the chat that you'd like to share with the group, and then we'll go to Joe.
Hi, yeah, Joe Wozniak with the Bay City Cooperative Market, along with Susan here. We're on the same team. But yeah, we're organizing. We're at stage 2A right now, and I'm trying to get all our stuff in order to move to stage 2B. So we're in the process of starting to do a business plan and a pro forma. We got around 250 couple plus owners, and we're not quite ready to do a capital campaign per se, but we're looking to try to find ways of fundraising prior to doing that. And we I just started working with the Small Business Development Center here in Michigan, and the MSU, Michigan State University's got an extension that offers assistance as well. And it seems like coming out of both of them, there's going to be opportunities possibly in the future for us to get some what did she call it here? Let me take a look. I think it might have been USDA funding possibly. And she said a lot of that is matching grants and matching fundraising opportunities, not just grants, but other ways of fundraising as well. Crowdfunding, she called it.
Okay, interesting.
Cool.
Well, it's never too early to think about your fundraising, really, because
we do have things that we need to fundraise for at this point, because we want to get in on the pro forma now, and that would be good to fundraise for. And there are some solid things that we could do with the money at this point. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, glad you're here. Linda, we'll go to you.
I'm also with Jason at the Grand Rapids Food Co-op. And he said where we're at.
Awesome. Okay, thanks.
Around
Susan?
415 owners.
Susan, anything else you want to add? Introduce yourself for. I think if you're talking, Susan, you're muted.
Sorry. No, I'm also from the Bay City Co-op, Bay City, Michigan. Nice to see other Michigan people here. So I think Joe kind of really said everything. We need more members. We're trying, but it's hard with COVID. We have a lot around here right now, the B5 variant.
Yeah,
Funny.
yeah. Well, good.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you're here, Susan. I am going to share my screen, and then we're going to talk a little bit about match challenges. To rearrange here. Okay, and I saw in the chat, let's see here. Kathy says that they're fundraising for our community investment fund, even though we have a federal grant, it's reimbursement grant. So we need cash. Yes, absolutely. Those grants are awesome, but if they are reimbursement grants, then you have to figure out where you're going to get the money to pay up front so that you can get reimbursed. So I'm glad everyone is here. It really isn't ever too early to start thinking about fundraising, and match challenges are a really cool way to do that. So the first thing that we are going to talk about today is exactly what a match challenge is. So typically it's a pool of funds that are leveraged in order to double or triple the amount of funds. They're time sensitive, usually very specific time sensitive, and goal oriented. So a successful match challenge, in my opinion, there are different ways to do a match challenge, but a successful match challenge, in my opinion, is contingent on meeting the goal. So for example, let's just say Becky has agreed to loan the co-op $25,000 if we can match that $25,000 by Monday at midnight. So it's very specific. There's a specific date and time. There's a specific amount. There's a specific person, and it doesn't always have to be a specific person. It can be an anonymous person. It can be a pool of people. And it only happens if we reach the goal. Now, when we're having conversations with folks, like when I first learned of Becky's contribution and the fact that she's interested in contributing at $25,000 level, I might say to her, hey, Becky, we could double this money if you would allow us to use this for a match. Typically, what Becky will say is, yes, absolutely, use it for a match. But she's giving us the money regardless. I want you to have this money regardless. So we're leveraging it to encourage contributions, but Becky has committed the funds. So if and when it comes Monday at midnight and we haven't raised $25,000, Becky's still going to give us her $25,000. And on Tuesday morning, we're going to say, you know, we didn't hit our goal, but we got to $19,000. And Becky was so impressed with our fundraising efforts that she's agreed to make that contribution of $25,000. Now that's how they're designed and how they work traditionally. But I will tell you that I have never worked with a co-op that has used a match challenge that was not successful. They work. They just, period. There's really no further discussion. They work. So it's very rare that you get yourself into that situation where you have to backpedal or kind of finesse your language a little bit, but it's important that you're upfront about it and that the donor understands and that we understand how the challenge will work and what will happen. And I'm using donor here. I'm talking about an investor. That can be donations, investments, shares. I'm using those terms interchangeably. So let's talk a little bit about where the money comes from. Typically, in a cooperative campaign, I have seen the money come from 3 different groups of people. The first one is organized owners. So if you have an active and engaged ownership group, and sometimes a co-op has an ownership, an owner's Facebook page, an owner's Facebook group where they're interacting together. And I've seen that be leveraged in these kinds of situations where an owner goes to the private Facebook group and says, hey, you know, I'd like to do a match challenge. Would anyone consider joining me? Would you, you know, if we could pool $20,000, we can take that out to everyone and see if we can match it. So if you have a strong owner or someone who's organized and wants to pool funds together, even neighbors, I've seen neighbors that live in the vicinity of the co-op who are really excited about the store, pool their funds together to create a match challenge. And like the example I gave before, where Becky was our high level investor, that's typically where the dollars are going to come from. That's the most common source of a match challenge. So when you're having conversations with potential investors and you get the impression that this is a high level contribution, that's when you start asking them to consider a match. Does this make sense to you? Can we double your money? Can we double your impact and consider a match? That's tricky. In the sense that if you're keeping track, it's very what's the word? Like when you really want to do something, it's very hard. Like when that $25,000 comes in from Becky, it's really hard for me not to just put that in our total and be like, oh my gosh, we got $25,000. We're now at 125,000 instead of 100,000. But when we get those conversations happening and those contributions coming in, we should consider them first as matches. So not to include them in our total yet, so that we can do the match. And then, we're going to increase that number by 50,000 instead of $25,000. But I've also seen organizations participate in match challenges. And those organizations can be wide and varied. For example, I've seen unions give significant contributions for a match. I've seen environmental organizations give match, foundations, other cooperative businesses. So cooperative businesses, there are some big name cooperatives. And I have not seen a lot of success in this, but in my mind, this would be awesome if like Blue Diamond Almonds or a local electric co-op would participate in a match challenge. I think that could be a really cool pool of funds to leverage for a match challenge.
So Katie, what I just heard you say is if you do get an investor, instead of getting excited about that and putting that into the total, you hold that back until after the match time has come and gone.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, you're exactly right. And that's if it's going to be used for a match. If it's not used for a match, then you just plug it in. Yep. Okay, so execution of a match challenge is tricky. It seems pretty simple. It seems like, if we hit this goal, we do this. But experience has taught me that it's not quite so simple, because someone's going to ask you if they already contributed, if they contribute again, does that count? Do board member contributions count? If I made my contribution last night, does it count instead of today? Is there a minimum contribution to count for the match? And I have seen some co-ops utilize a minimum pretty successfully in a match challenge. So, we would welcome all kinds of contribution levels, but to participate in the match, they had a minimum. And I had something else to tell you about that, but I don't have it in front of me. But really what we want to do at this stage of the game is lay out the ground rules. So the match challenge starts on X date at X time and ends on X date and X time. These are the contributions that qualify, whatever those might be, if they're loans or shares or donations or all of them. There's a minimum, there is no minimum, and specify the details. That's the very first step in executing a successful match challenge, is solidifying those details. Then the next step is to develop a communication strategy. So it's one thing to have a match challenge, but if you can't tell anyone about it, or if they don't know about it, it's not going to be successful. So I have a specific communication strategy that I implement with success in a match challenge that includes emails, posts, graphics, and a schedule for those things, so that you're constantly talking about it and keeping the match challenge in front of your audience. and then executing that plan. So you've made your rules, you've created a communication plan. Now it's time to execute that plan. And executing that plan, one of the critical components of that is making sure that your volunteers, your callers, the folks who are reaching out to owners are trained. So before you execute a match challenge, you've got to pull your team aside. You've got to talk this through with them, share the rules with them, share the communication strategy with them, and then keep them updated over the course of the challenge. So the callers are the folks, they're in the weeds, they're dialing the phones, they're working really hard, and we get caught up in the activity of what's happening sometimes without recognizing that the callers want to know what's happening. Like, am I successful? How close are we? And so really giving them more information, especially during a match challenge, than we're giving the public about the match challenge. The callers should have a really almost real time awareness of where we are with the match challenge, how close we are. The other thing I'll mention, when I didn't talk about when we're talking about the plan itself, is that these are short-term plans. These are short-term challenges. So this is a week, this is a weekend, this is a few days. This isn't a month-long thing. These are very short-term. And in my experience, you want to start at least 10,000. And if the lower the amount you're starting with, the shorter the duration of the challenge. So a $10,000 match, in my opinion, you should be able to do that in one day. 12 hours or 10 hours to get $10,000, something like that. That should be pretty doable in a day or two. $50,000, a weekend maybe. And if you did $100,000, maybe it's a week. So you really want to correlate the timing, the duration of the match challenge to the size of the challenge itself. But that execution is critical. So making sure your volunteers are trained, that they understand it, that they keep abreast of what's happening with the campaign is really critical. And then celebrating it, making sure that celebration is part of your process. So that means celebration publicly, so you're sending an email out to everyone. Hey, we hit our goal. You're posting it on social media, but you're also celebrating with your team. This is raising this kind of money is hard work, and these short-term promotions intensify that work because everybody's excited and energized. And I might be making calls 2 or 3 days in a row instead of 2 or 3 days a week during a match challenge as a volunteer. And so really celebrating with the team, whether that's virtually or in person. I always like a handwritten thank you note or other ways I could talk for an hour only about volunteer recognition, but celebration is part of that. And I'd make sure that you're celebrating your successes when a match challenge happens. There are a couple examples I want to share with you guys. The Rooted Carrot Co-op in Cedar Falls, Iowa, executed some match challenges in their capital campaign last year. Very successful campaigns, very successful challenges. They actually did 3, I believe, and I included some graphics from 2 of them. The first one was their Spring Forward challenge, and that just happened to correlate with when we changed clocks, when you set your clocks forward. And so that was the deadline of the challenge. So 2 a.m. on whatever day it is that you change your clocks was the deadline of the challenge. And our goal was to reach $25,000. So they had these cute images of the clock at 6,000, it was filled in, and then we filled it in as we went around until we got to the $10,000 mark, or to the $25,000 mark. At this point in this graphic, we were at $10,000. So this was the graphic that was posted on social media. And if it correlated to timing of an email, it probably was a graphic that went out in an email. But really creating a strong communication strategy with corresponding graphics is really, really helpful. The other challenge here was a 24 karat gold challenge. Instead of 24 karat gold challenge, they had the amount of money they had available for a match just happened to be $24,000. It was like a $20,000 loan and two $2,000 loans. It just happened to come in about the same time. And so that was a pooled source of funds from owners that they used to reach the challenge. And that one also, that was successful as well. This one, the deadline was December 31st. You can see in the graphic at the bottom if it's not too tiny. But I like to correlate the deadline with the iteration. So in this instance, we went with the December 31st because of the end of the year and the holidays. But I would have liked to said 24 carats gold by the 24th, which in this case would have been December 24th, which is crazy. And that would have never worked on a holiday. But I like the iteration, you know, like $10,000 by 10 a.m. or whatever we can come up with. I think, you know, the 2 a.m. Time change, you know, was a really nice iteration. People were already familiar with what was happening there. So thinking about where you are, like logistically in the calendar year and in the month and in the course of your campaign also helps you decide on what those challenges might look like. Here's a couple more examples. You can see this is the celebration graphic that they used for that first Spring Forward challenge. That was the $20,000 challenge. And then a series of graphics that talk about where you are in the development of the challenge. So how many days are left? 12 days left, 10 days left. And 12 days is really too long. This was at a time when they were doing, this was at the end of they had finished their capital campaign. So this was a bonus kind of holiday giving thing. So they did it over a longer period of time. But in a short-term challenge, you know, you'd say 5 days left, 4 days left, 3 days left. Today's the last day, you know, you got to do it now. But that kind of urgent messaging that really inspires activity. So I've been talking for a while, so I'll be quiet now and let you guys ask some questions.
I can start us off with the questions. Is there a better time during a campaign to do a match challenge? Have you seen it kind of work more successfully in other places of the campaign than others?
Yeah, that's a great question, Becky. And now that we're starting to accumulate some data, what we see with fundraising cycles in a capital campaign is it's a roller coaster. You know, so you start off strong, it slows down, you go back up. Basically, it follows that kind of peak and valley. So match challenges are successful in getting you out of a peak. So I would say not, you know, unless you're going to go out of the gate with a match, I would say let the silent phase of your fundraising, so the stuff that's happening beforehand, carry your first peak. And then 2 weeks probably out, I would have a match. In a perfect world, you know, you'd do a match challenge and that you'd ride that wave and you'd have that momentum for a while, and then maybe schedule another one at the 4 week or 6 week mark, and then one at the end. And that it's hard to do, you know, in a perfect world, it's like, oh yeah, do it here, here, and here. But you got to get the funds, and then you got to get the graphics going. And so oftentimes we can't allocate the resources to it. But if we're planning for it and preparing for it ahead of time, that helps. Other questions?
So you said 2 weeks and then maybe 4 or 6 weeks. So you're thinking, what kind of a timeline are you thinking for even a capital campaign?
So yeah, a campaign lasts 8 to 12 weeks typically. So, you know, if you were doing an 8-week campaign, I'd say the 2 week, 4 week, 6 week mark or 8 week mark, one at the end would be good. If you were doing a 12-week campaign, you could space it out a little bit or maybe consider adding 1 or 2 more. Yes, Susan.
Where do you usually get where do people get these catchy graphics? Is it usually people who in the on your board come up? with
Yeah,
it, or
well, it's
not?
usually you'll have my recommendation would be that you'd have a communication team working on your capital campaign. So
Mhm.
it's usually 3 to 5 people, a graphics person, someone who's good at social media, content writing for social media, and someone who's working on your email. And then you can also consider somebody who's doing more tailored, like video or testimonial options for your communication. So you'd have a team, and you'd recruit those volunteers ahead of time, and hopefully they have the right skill set to do that kind of work.
Oh, so you typically, like, you would send out emails or something to your ownership saying, we're looking for people. I don't know, how do you find those people in your ownership?
Yeah.
I mean, 'cause it's
Social
not gonna be
media is
important. Mhm.
Yeah, social media is a good option. I like, in terms of volunteer recruitment, I almost always include an ask in every email, like these are the volunteer roles that we need to fill. And then at events, always have a volunteer sign up when you're having an event. And Linda has something to add, I think.
Yeah, I've had really good experience with reaching out. We ask when they apply,
Mm-hmm.
different areas you might want to volunteer in. And so the people who check off a box, I make sure whoever's leading that circle gets their name. And the ideal thing is to reach out right away,
Mhm.
schedule a one-on-one time at a coffee shop,
Yep.
and just get to know these people who are joining your co-op one-on-one. And then you really have a clear idea of what they're good at, the kind of person they're like, who they might get along with. And you can, I've had really good luck getting some fresh volunteers in
Mhm.
for us that way.
Yeah, Linda, I am such a huge fan of one-on-one meetings. I think it's a big tool we can use that we don't do as much as we should. Yeah, Joe.
I was just curious, Linda, have you been able to obtain any board members that way as well? We're at a point where we've expanded our board and lost a couple people, so we're needing to add to our board at this point, and just looking for any tips and suggestions.
Yeah, that
as far as
and
attracting a good board members.
the other thing I do is look up the people on LinkedIn, whatever it's called, LinkedIn or Facebook if they have enough public on Facebook. But
Sure.
LinkedIn may give you an idea of what are some of these
Sure.
people who are joining up to.
That's a
And then
good
you can
idea.
say, I see you're involved with blah blah. Sure could use help in that area. Do you have time? Or just schedule a meeting. Get to know them
Mhm.
first before you
Mhm.
ask them to spend more time with you. Let them
Yeah.
know you're a real person and a trustworthy person.
Right on.
And I think
you.
I find that when recruiting board members, the best success I had was with current volunteers.
Yeah.
So someone who's operating within the co-op but isn't a board member, those are the people that I usually sit down with first and have a conversation like, hey, I noticed you've been volunteering a lot, and you have these great skills, and you'd be really valuable
Sure.
as a board member.
So, yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, what other questions do we have related to match challenges or unrelated?
I guess, are you doing all types of social media, Katie? When you're putting this out, are you hitting like besides Facebook, are you doing Instagram? Are you doing other stuff too? Or
Yeah. Personally, I do not do Instagram or any other platform, Twitter or TikTok, but many co-ops are. And I would say my recommendation always is to lean towards the one that you have the strength in. So if you have someone on your team who's really good at Facebook, it's okay if that's what you're using is Facebook, because that's where your strength is. But if you have capacity and you can expand to other platforms, absolutely. And a lot of times you can just use a scheduler, like where you can post to multiple platforms at the same time. So it's not a huge additional amount of work.
sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean by scheduler? Is it an automated thing?
Yeah, there are some online platforms where you can create posts to schedule and post to different platforms. So, you'd create the post and then simultaneously it would go to Facebook, Instagram, wherever else you're going.
Do you know the names of any of those?
I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I have them and I can get them for you. Oh yeah, Linda
Oh.
probably knows. Yeah.
Well, if you're in the business suite of Facebook, they have a planner there, and then you can hook your Instagram.
Yes,
with
Facebook
your-
doesn't link
with
Instagram.
your
Yep.
Facebook.
yep.
I don't know about TikTok or anything, but
Yeah,
at least those
I know
two
that.
hook together.
And I used one. I used to use one, so it'll come back to me, Susan. I'll get the name of it.
Think of it.
Okay, other questions? No?
We're
Well,
all on vacation.
Well, that's all right. That's awesome. It's summer. It is summer. I'm looking through my guidelines. I have a set of guidelines that I usually make available to a co-op that I'm working with, and I'm just making sure that there's nothing on here that we can expand on a little more. Oh, you know what I will say, and probably Becky, this is relevant to the work you'll be doing, is that larger size contributions that can be utilized in a match challenge typically take time. So it's very rare that somebody's going to come to the co-op and say, I'll give you $50,000 or I'll give you $25,000.
I'll loan you.
Or I'll loan it. They're not going to give at that amount. They're not going to participate at that amount without some time investment, typically. So that's important to keep in mind when we're talking about scheduling or preparing for match challenges. That, let's say the capital campaign starts on August 1st. Well, you can't start thinking about match challenges on August 1st. Because on August 1st, we're going to be so busy doing other things that it's going to take us probably 4 weeks before we can get a significant contribution of that size that we could use for a match challenge. So you want to back up your timeline. So you want to start planning these match challenges and start fostering relationships with potential high donors as soon as you can. And that can happen now for each and every one of you. This does not have to be something you have to have in place when you're ready to start your capital campaign, but you can be meeting with local foundations and you can be meeting with local unions and you can have coffee with the family foundation owner, or executor, just to tell them about the co-op, hey, you're an influential community member, and I want you to know about something cool that's happening in our community, and tell them about the co-op. So starting to build those relationships sooner than later is really a critical piece of the puzzle, because then when you get, let's say, if we were starting our campaign on August 1st, when we got to June 1st, we could go to those people and say, okay, we have this relationship now, about the co-op, you've become an owner, you like us, we like you. We'd like you to be a special part of our capital campaign. And here's how that would play out. And that's when we start creating these challenges that we can then leverage at specific points in the capital campaign. Yes, Susan.
I don't know if other communities have something like this. We have Bay Area Community Foundation, and they told us that they can only work with nonprofits, so they can't really work with us. However, I was thinking they do have a lot of family funds that people have done. And if we or other people who have something like this in their area, if you could look through and see if anything has to do with food or maybe children's nutrition or something that could possibly connect, like with food co-op, you could contact those people perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And when you're when you're going to begin your fundraising, you'll need to decide if you will use a fiscal sponsor who will receive who will receive tax deductible donations on your behalf. So in that case, Susan, the Bay Area Foundation might not be able to support you financially, but they might be able to serve as your fiscal agents to receive donations from you for you on your behalf and then distribute them to you. There are also other options for fiscal sponsorship. And my favorite one is the Cooperative Development Services Fund. And it's a fund designed specifically, it's a fiscal agent basically designed specifically for co-ops.
What's it called again?
Cooperative Development Services Fund. And Kevin Edberg is the director. And I'll get his email and put it in the chat before we're done, so you have it. I don't think they have a website. And Kathy's saying that's the fiscal agent that they use. Their technical, prowess isn't probably as up to par as others, but they're wonderful and they do great work. And the difference between using Cooperative Development Services Fund as your fiscal agent than a local community foundation, which both are good options, and I recommend both, is that your local foundation is going to have restrictions. So their charter as a nonprofit requires them to use their funds for certain purposes. And those purposes may or may not be related to the co-op. So for example, education is a big one. A foundation might be chartered under education. And so they could take funds on your behalf if you use them for the teaching kitchen or programming or educational support, but they can't help you with construction or inventory or salaries or those kinds of things. On the flip side, Cooperative Development Services Fund is their charter, their nonprofit charter is to support co-ops. So there's very few restrictions on what you can use funds that are funneled through their organization for. So you can use them for construction, you can use them for salaries, you can use them for inventory and the kinds of expenses that we expect to incur.
Do they take a percentage or something?
They do.
They do take a percentage, yeah.
Any
course.
fiscal agent is going to take their share, and it's not insignificant. I will say that it's a decent percentage, but in my opinion, it's worth it because of the unrestricted use of the funds typically, or the very, very few restricted uses of the funds. And because it allows people to participate that couldn't participate otherwise, or people who want and need a tax deduction for their contribution. It gives you that benefit.
Yep.
So oftentimes it's worth that to pay the fee.
And I did meet the president from that Chicago market who is using them as well at the conference, Susan, and yeah, that is exactly who they're using, the Corporate Development Fund. There's a something on the memorandum or memorum, MEMORUM on their website, it says. So I'm gonna have to look into that.
One died.
Yeah, a memorandum. That's yes.
Oh, memorandum.
Yes. Yeah, they have that's basically their operating agreement with co-ops. And I'm putting Kevin's email in the chat for you all. They have it basically lays out the specifications of their part of the relationship, your part of the relationship, what the fees are.
Right.
And they're really growing, and they really are doing really great work to serve as many co-ops as they can. They almost have national registration. I think all of us would be states that they already are registered in, but they are expanding their registration. I think later this year they'll be national. They could do it for any co-op in any state.
Yep,
Linda,
that's
did
what
you
I
have a
heard.
question?
So my question was, I noticed one co-op was doing their campaign and they were getting pledges
Mm-hmm.
rather than actual money check coming in that they hold in escrow until the drive is over.
Yeah, so there's some semantics involved here, Linda,
Yeah.
in a capital campaign. So each co-op talks about their language differently. In some co-ops, a pledge is the contribution. Whether it comes in now or it comes in 6 months from now, you're pledging me $5,000 today when we're on the phone, and then in a week from now, I'm going to follow up and say, "Hey, Linda, I haven't got your check for $5,000 yet." So once it's in, it's a contribution, but until it's in, it's a pledge. We refer to them as a pledge in a lot of co-ops. But then the structure of your accounting is also different co-op to co-op. So in some co-ops, they do hold funds in so there are two paths you could go down here. Maybe there's 3 paths we could go down. So the first path would be the example that you've given, Linda, where you make your pledge, but you don't make your payment until later. That's one way to do it. And I haven't seen a co-op use that with much success, because the follow-up is really hard, because now you're doing it twice. Basically, you already got them to say yes. Now you got them to say yes again and write their check. And that might be 3 months from now or 6 months from now. My recommendation is to go one of 2 ways. The first way would be to have the individual make their pledge and follow up immediately for contribution, like within 7 days. And then we tell them this is part of the process, that we expect you to write your check and sign your paperwork within 7 days. And those funds are deposited. That's the process, regardless of, that would be my recommendation of process. The 2 paths you can go down then are to use an escrow or to not use an escrow. So if you use an escrow, the funds go into a protected account. So we have the money, but it sits in a protected account until we're ready to use it. So it serves the same purpose as the first example, but we already have the money. We don't have to do it again. We don't have to ask again. The second path puts the funds in an account which is readily accessible to the co-op and that can be used at their discretion. So in those instances, you have to think about when risk starts for the investor and when interest or dividends start for the investor.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. Jason, is that making sense to you? He's our treasurer. He's our numbers
Oh,
guy.
good. It's good that the treasurer's nodding his head. Mhm. Any other questions?
I have a question not related to this topic, but the topic of the USDA grants.
Mhm.
And so I saw some conversation in the chat about that. And whoever was saying they went through their congresswoman, to do that. I would just like to hear just a little bit more about that. And if it is, because I heard you, Katie, talking about grants that are actually, what did you call them? Reimbursement grants.
Mhm.
So I guess my question is, are there different grants that aren't reimbursed? That it's just
Yes, yes.
here, have some money, please.
Yeah, there are. And, grants are a topic that we could spend days on, really.
Mhm.
And I know Kathy can't talk. She's at work right now. But what I do know, Becky, is that I sat in on a session that Bethlehem did at the Up and Coming conference that talked about their funding and their program, their co-op, and how they've gotten to where they are. And I think that might be helpful for you to look at that. And I can get you the links to that. And when I send the follow-up email from this session, I'll put that in the I'll put USDA Bethlehem link. I'm writing that down so I don't forget in the email. So you'll have access to that. But the short answer to the question is there are all types of grants. Yes, there are grants that just give you money up front, you use it, and then you document and report back how you spent it. And then there are grants who have the money and then you spend it, you make the expenditure, submit your receipt, they pay you back. That's typical, I think, for a smaller grants, but honestly, they vary the spectrum. And we talked earlier about qualifying for matching grants. I think, Joe, you mentioned and how that applies to match challenges.
Mhm.
These are a little different. A match challenge happens, when you're executing a campaign, like you're in the throes of it. In those instances, the matches typically come in a grant application. The match typically comes from other kinds of sources. And the kinds of sources I've seen useful are volunteer hours. So quantifying the value of volunteer hours. If you've been keeping records of how much time individuals have invested, some co-ops have an hour calculate or an hour. People submit their volunteer hours, and so they can take that total number times the average or the tax value of a volunteer hour, which I think right now is like $28, and that's matched. Those dollars, that value can be used as matches, as can other kinds of things.
Right.
Yeah, tax incentives that your city has can be used as match challenge. I shouldn't say USDA, a grant match requirement. You can use those kinds of things to fill. So it feels kind of like matching it with play money, but it's real value. There's real value to the item that you're attributing the match to.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little question. I guess maybe it's a semantic thing. There's something that feels a little bit disingenuous to me about the match challenge saying, we have this $25,000.
Mm-hmm.
You give it to us if we reach this 25. You can't say if we do that, we're going to get it because we're going to get it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do we avoid?
Yeah, and every co-op has to make that decision for themselves. And some co-ops are totally comfortable with it. Some are not. But I will tell you a match challenge that is specific, that if we meet this goal by this date is more successful than, we'd like to meet this goal. And if we do, it's cool. That doesn't inspire action. So every co-op has to make that decision. My thought process is that this is a practice utilized in every fundraising campaign since the beginning of time, really. I shouldn't say every, 90% of them. It's a way to leverage. I think of it more as leveraging the contribution by creating a false deadline.
Value added.
Yeah.
Value added.
Doubling your money, making it better for all of us instead of just the value of the contribution itself. So it is a consideration and that every co-op has to come to terms with, and are we okay communicating in that fashion? And that's how the rules, when we're writing the rules, Jason, that's where we can get specific with individual co-ops. Like, okay, in our instance, this is what we're comfortable with, and this is what we would like to utilize in terms of how we talk about it, what terminology we use. But it's a good point.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to confirm that I wasn't missing something.
Yeah.
We've been trying incentives for ownership, things like that, and I wondered if there's a way to leverage this kind of psychology of the match challenge for that same thing.
Yeah. The way I see it leveraged in terms of an owner growth is the kind of a short term, like if we hit 20 owners, then all 20 owners get XYZ. If we get, whatever the number is. And I like iterations. I said that before, like 31 owners by the 31st, then everybody gets ice cream at the local ice cream shop or whatever incentive it is. 15 owners by the 15th or 40 owners by the 4th of July. Those kinds of things, I think those work well with the if we get it, if we hit it, then we get this. I wish we could do, I wish it would be like, it would be cool if we had somebody who would donate, like 10 ownerships that we could give away for free. Or we could use a scholarship ownerships. And then if we get 10 owners this month, then this person will contribute 10 ownership value to the fund. To something like that could be cool too, but I haven't played that out in the real world yet. Yes, Susan.
This is kind of off topic, but more, well, an ownership growth, but when your co-op has started like a long time ago, like 2015, and then, COVID came along and everything's kind of old and stalled. I wonder how you generate more enthusiasm with the owners, because they haven't really seen anything yet, and it's been a while. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mhm.
I don't
It
know.
takes a long time to open a co-op. It sure does. So my thought process there, Susan, is I go to communication. So how have we been communicating about the co-op, and how can we? Oh, did I just lose everybody?
No.
We're here.
No.
Oh, okay. Somehow my screen just went totally blank there for a second. But to think about communication and regular, frequent communication about the co-op is really valuable. So a monthly email with updates, even when we feel like there's not enough to say, there's stuff to say. We can come up with content. Absolutely. So I think regular communication is key. There's also a really cool video that comes to mind when you bring that up from FCI called "Why Does It Take So Long?" or something like that. And it's JQ Hannah talking about the process of opening a co-op and why it takes so long. It's a 2 or 3 minute video. It's good for social media, good for newsletters. But really and truly, I think stressing the fact that it's better for us to cross all the T's and dot all the I's and take our time and do it right than to do it fast and wrong. And so I think that kind of messaging that we're stronger when we work together, and working together takes longer than, an entity, corporation coming in and taking money from us, taking our dollars. Yes, Linda.
I'm thinking Bay City, you're not that far from Mount Pleasant, right?
Yeah, not too far.
Because
How far
they
is it,
just
Joe?
moved in. They just moved into a new facility, and you might want to take a little field trip.
No, we were talking about that already. Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
caravan.
We had a couple people go down there individually, but we need to make a trip as a crew and see if we can talk to the GM and see if we can,
Yeah.
I don't know, get some information bestowed upon us. Yeah.
Well, at least
Yeah.
just see
Right.
what your vision is. Because
Mhm.
I went over there. It's nice. I guess some of you have seen it too. And then North Flint is doing some interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We've been talking.
And Detroit.
Yeah. I think that's a excellent point, Linda, that I think field trips are a great idea. Taking a group of owners there and taking lots of pictures and then sharing and posting that's awesome. But then I also think individually, as we're going to these places and stopping at these, that we're taking pictures and we're sharing it with the co-op and saying, hey, I found this great co-op and here's some really cool pictures, and then the co-op can share them. I think making it real for our audience is really important. And also the grocery story book. Are you guys, do you have that? This could be ours
This could
book.
be ours.
Mhm.
This could be ours. Yeah.
There's digital versions of all of those photos available on the website. And
Oh,
so
that's good to know.
you can share those, you can use those. And I actually just looked at John Steinman's website again recently. He and I are going to collaborate on a few things. He has lots of videos on his website, lots of things we could share about co-ops that are in action and co-ops that have been successful, or fundraising, or expansions. And so those kinds of things can help make it more real for people and help bridge the gap between now and when we open.
So we could put links to that stuff on our website, right?
Absolutely.
With-
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think, clearly I would cite the source, and it's going to take them to that page. And if I were posting one of John's videos, I would mention him and
Yeah.
share his contact or his website and all that good stuff. But absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
And there's Facebook Live. If you're at another co-op, I Facebook Live myself. It drives people nuts, I'm sure, but why not?
Here I am at the co-op. Yeah.
I mean, I was our co-op in Fayetteville,
Mhm.
Right on. Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. Absolutely.
I've
And the
started
other
doing.
thing I just did was on my last newsletter I just sent out today was it's vacation time. Seek out the co-ops where you're going.
Mhm.
Look at them. What are you inspired by that you see there? Let us know, and just kind of
Yes.
this.
That's a great idea.
Do you think we could do that here?
Mhm. What will
Help
it look
us
like
do
at our
it here.
co-op? Mhm. I love that. Yes, Becky.
I can respond to everything that just happened there. But going back to Susan, I have started doing informational interviews, the cup of coffee one-on-ones with people of means within our community who have actually done successful fundraising, not in the for-profit sense that co-ops are, but in philanthropy and the nonprofit. And they also happen to be people of means who are in our community. And the pandemic really has, I think, done us a favor up here anyway, in talking about the reliance on community, the focus on community, the shortcomings in distribution, existing systems that has been highlighted through the pandemic. So right now it's more
Yes.
like people in our community owning a grocery store, with people in our community who are producers and farmers, and so just really that more independent nature of it is really appealing, is what I'm finding.
That's awesome.
And then we do have people who I've talked to so far who are doing, who do go out and about and say, "Oh, have you guys been to Grand Marais?" to their co-op. And so I love the idea of, asking people to talk about what they like about other co-ops they've been to. I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll also point out, Becky, absolutely the pandemic, I think, has done us a favor in the cooperative world, 100%. Another example, real world example, is the Oshkosh Food Co-op in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. They just suffered through a really bad storm, lost power, lost a lot of product, pretty significant setback for first year co-op. They're just past their first anniversary. And immediately local producers responded. They sent an email out today with a list of the local farmers who, they couldn't get supply trucks to come, from the distributor, but they got the local farmers they came right away, sometimes within a day, within hours of knowing that the co-op needed supply. And so those kinds of stories, they mean a lot. And I think you're right. This is where we are now. And people value what we want to bring to our communities. And we can use that when we're having these conversations. Yeah. Okay, well, we're at 1:00. I'm a stickler for time. I don't want to keep us too much longer. But I appreciate all of you being here. It's a pleasure to talk with you and have coffee or whatever drink it is that you're having. I'm having some water because it's hotter than Hades down here. But it's my pleasure to get to spend time with you. So I appreciate you. And I'll be sending out the recording of this along with the resources that we've talked about. Becky, for sure, the link to the Bethlehem
Thank you.
presentation, and I'll include Kevin Edberg's contact information in there too for the CDS fund, and we'll get you followed up. So feel free to share that with others in your co-op or others that that could use it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yay.
Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
Thank you.